Welcome to the Church Energy Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Bruce, and I'm excited to be joined by Joseph Lewis today. Joseph, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, sure, man. I'm Joseph. I'm completely unworthy of any introduction. I'm a minister with the Flower Mound Church of Christ. I've been in ministry for 7, 8 years now. I'm
Okay.
on my third kid, and the third one is only 6 weeks old. I'm losing track of all numbers. All right, so
Oh, yeah.
this anniversary is going to be a tough one to remember anyway. So, but yeah, I've been working with the church for a while. I grew up kind of working with the church. My dad was a minister, and my mom always had projects and involvement. And so I've been passionate about ministry and really doing a form of unofficial ministry since I was in high school, at least. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, man, I'm married for 8.5 years, almost 9 years. Got 3 kids, like I said, and I mean I love the Bible. I love talking about the Bible. So I'm excited to talk with you today, man.
Awesome. Yeah. All those dates are getting tougher and tougher to keep track of. I only have one 6 months old, and I'm already like, oh my goodness, my wife's birthday's coming up. And, and like,
Dude, kids show up and your birthdays become irrelevant. Like
oh yeah.
completely irrelevant.
Yeah, it's so crazy. I can't even imagine three. You're in my prayers, brother.
Thanks, man.
So hey, the main topic that I want to talk about today is I've been having guests for the past couple of weeks on to talk about this is just what is church energy. You know, this is a new podcast that has gotten started, and I'm really just looking to see, like, where do we find energy in the church? Where do we find excitement? Like, what is it about the church that just fires you up and you say, you know, this is what is lighting a fire within me? I think of Jeremiah in chapter 29, verse 11, when he says, if I say I can't talk about God, if I say I can't preach about him, it'd be like if I was trying to shut up a fire in my bones, and I can't.
Yeah.
I'm weary with holding it in. And there are times when I feel that, where I'm like, there's like a fire in my bones. I've got to get it out. I can't hold it in. And there's other times where the energy and excitement isn't there quite as much. And so I'm really wondering, like what is it that creates that fire? What is it that sparks the energy and makes you say, I am excited to be a Christian?
So for me personally, I don't know. When you say church energy, what does church energy mean to you? My brain goes two different directions. So maybe we'll have
Okay.
time to look at both of them. But the one that comes to my mind first is actually, just as you were talking, it was ringing in my ears, is community.
Mm.
There's there's something extraordinarily unique about a community of people. There's something very, I would say, God-like about a tight knit and close group of people, and I mean that in
Yeah.
general. Like you see people find community in a number of different places in the world, just in their secular, in their day to day life. For example, you've, I'm sure, gone into an office before where you could tell people just enjoyed being around each other. There was unity among them, and it didn't have
Yeah.
anything necessarily to do with religion or faith or Christ, but there was an energy in the building. Might even be a way people describe it. And I think when the church taps into that, which is something that God, I mean, He put that into the church from the beginning. But when the church
Yeah.
is able to tap into that sense of community and that sense of fellowship and belonging, I mean, that I have never seen people grow more than when they have that foundation of community. And so,
Yeah.
like as you were talking, like I said, the thing that has gotten me the most excited is when I know that I'm going to spend time with other people that I sincerely want to spend time with. And I feel like that's kind of mean to other people, but I think you understand kind of where I'm coming from with that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and so we're both sports guys. There's something about the team when they're
Yeah.
playing as a team. They're unbeatable. It can be less talented players, but if they're playing and having unity, then they're going to be a lot better. I remember even at camp growing up, we'd always
Oh,
have pickup
man.
basketball games, and there are some guys that are way more talented than others, obviously. But then whenever you got a team of guys that are all from the same church and they're all used to playing together and they know
Yeah.
when they're going to be cutting to the basket, when they're going to be in the corner waiting for that pass to hit the corner three,
Mhm.
and they just know where each other's going to be. They may not be as talented, but they have more success because they have unity and they work together better. And the church
Yeah.
is the same way.
Sorry,
Yeah, no,
go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you
I
off.
was just going to say that the church is the same way. When we are able to work together and when we are familiar with one another and knowing, hey, this person's going to be there whenever I'm down. This person's going to be there whenever I'm ready to rejoice. I remember my mom when we were growing up, she had a group of ladies that they were like her crying group. It was whenever there was
Yeah.
something sad going on at the
Yeah.
church, if somebody had a loss or if anything was going on where tears were brought about, then there were all these ladies that would actually like
Would
lean
weep
on
with
one
those
another.
who were weeping. Yeah. That's
Exactly.
beautiful.
Yeah. And they knew who to go to because not everybody has that talent. There's been times where there have been sad moments and I'm not really an emotional person and I'm not trying to be like one of those guys that's just like, oh, I don't cry. Like I genuinely
Yeah.
am not brought to tears easily at all.
Yeah.
And there are times that are sad and I wish I could cry because I think people look at me and they're like, oh, well, Dylan must not really be affected by this. I am. I'm not brought to tears.
It's not the way it comes out with you. Yeah.
Yeah, but there are people that you know will cry with you when you need to cry. There are people that you know will rejoice with you when you are ready to rejoice, and that's one of the things that I really lean into. Whenever somebody has good news, then I am fired up about it, and I
Yeah.
want to rejoice with those who are rejoicing. But knowing who does what, knowing what the talents and skills are of your brothers and sisters, help to find that unity.
Yeah, and I think a really like we're kind of started at community, and I think unity is a huge. I mean, it's in the word, right? So I don't know if there's
Yeah,
something there, but the idea of a
probably.
community requires a level of unity among the people who are a part of it. And I think in general, we're talking. I mean, we're talking generally just about the human experience, but specifically as it relates to the church. I mean, Paul knew this. Like you look at Paul's writing and you just track everything he talks about. Like, number one, first and foremost, it's very obvious the most important thing to Paul was the gospel. There's no
Yeah.
question. The very, very clear number two was unity among the believers. And every time that he has a message, and really there's significant overlap in number one and number two, that the gospel is meant to bring about this type of unity in Christ. And I mean, when you are able to channel that unity where you are able to rely on each other, you trust each other, you have respect for one another, you are interested and want to know about and be around those people. I mean, that really develops this sense of community where it's almost like, the hierarchy of needs. Is it Maslow? It's,
Oh,
it's
I
it's
don't
like a
know.
psychological thing where it's the triangle and there's a hierarchy of needs. And
Okay.
it's like self-realizations at the top, but at the bottom you have things like food and shelter and, relationships. And then once you have those taken care of, you can kind of focus on education. And you really can't care about your education if you're starving is kind of the idea. And
Okay.
so
Yeah.
when you look at sort of that concept of community, community is a foundational piece of the church. Like, I can have Christ all by myself, and it's great, but it is not necessarily complete. It's not the way it was meant to be. And so, in
Yeah.
order for me to really know Christ and to understand more about who He is and how God works, this community has to be a part of that. Man, that's such an important thing
Yeah.
as you try to grow as a Christian. It's
You
so
know,
difficult to grow by yourself.
it makes me think
Yeah,
of
go ahead.
something. What has been come super popular, especially among younger people, Gen Z. I think you follow millennials, right?
I'm at the very end, but I have a millennial spirit. I'm pretty sure I was
Okay.
born 10 years after I was meant to. So yeah,
Okay. Well, so I'm full on in Gen Z.
yeah,
I'm like one of the first couple of years of Gen Z, but something that's become really popular among the Generation Z is the idea of being spiritual but not religious.
Mm-hmm.
Where
Mm-hmm.
people will say, I am a spiritual individual. I believe in a higher being. I believe in trying to obey him and living my life that is worthy of him. But people will say, but I'm not religious. I don't want to get involved with all of this religious mumbo jumbo and with all the churches and different things. And I think a lot of it comes from uh, seeing disunity, seeing
Yeah.
so many
Oh,
different
absolutely.
denominations, seeing so many different religions, and
Yeah.
people will say, I don't want to get myself involved in all of that, and that's
Yeah.
why we as the church have to really emphasize the unity that we have with one another. It's not as though we are all living our own religious and spiritual life and that we just happen to show up together on Sundays to worship
Yeah.
together. We're quite literally going through this walk with Christ together, and we
Yeah.
can't do it alone. We have to have one another to have a successful walk with Christ.
Yeah. I mean, this is I don't want to say it's overused, because can you really overuse Bible verses? But
Yeah.
this was built into the what it means to be a Christian, like from the very beginning. When at the day of Pentecost in Acts chapter 2, community was
Yep.
a part of this. And so, well, let me start here, because you had mentioned church camp, and you're talking about playing basketball at camp. Well, I'm going to be honest. One of the places I experienced, I know this isn't everyone's experience, but one of the places that I experienced community in a really profound way was at church camp. And there was this sense of, we're all here for the same reason. We're all here doing the same things. We're all here with a like a pointed focus. Of course, as I got older, I realized that wasn't always the case, but still,
Yeah.
it was the
Not
majority.
everybody is there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
still, it was the majority at least.
Oh yeah.
And so you have these, and we call them like camp friends, or everyone gets in like a camp relationship, like boyfriend. It's because there's this soil that is ready to cultivate these relationships and this community, where you've got people that you are having extended amount of time with. You're eating meals together every day, 3 times a day. In some cases, you're sleeping in the same room, and you're doing your bedtime routines together. Like that's a pretty
Yeah.
intimate kind of thing, where you're sleeping in a
Yeah.
cabin with all these other guys. You're doing recreational activities together, and most importantly, the camp I grew up going to was Reach Week, and I remember counting it up one time. You never did two regular things again, like back to back, without some spiritual thing in the middle, right? So it was like
Yep.
dinner, singing, sports, worship, lunch. Like it was always every other thing you did was something spiritually focused. And so then you're in this place and you're cultivating these relationships, because the soil is so ready for community to grow. And so
Yep.
that was always, I remember thinking back, and that was absolutely one of those places that I experienced community. I will tell you this: nothing, we call it a camp high, but nothing made me more motivated to be a Christian. Nothing energized me more than spending a week at camp with these people,
Yeah.
with the focus, and without so many of the distractions. Like, I had a rhythm to my life that produced this stuff. So, but then when you look at Acts 2, and I remember figuring this out when I was probably 2 years out of high school, like 2 years out of going to camp, and I was just sort of, I don't know, meditating, thinking. I was chewing on this. What was so special about that? What was so special about that? And the language I would use today is probably different than the language I used then, but it's community. It's the way God intended the church to look. So, do you mind
Yeah.
if we read? Is that
Absolutely. Yeah.
okay?
I've got Acts 2 pulled up right here. So go for it.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, it's that last little section in Acts chapter 2. Of course, Peter preaches this lesson in Acts 2 that's really cool, rich with Old Testament that he weaves into it. And then after his sermon, there's a response. I love that Peter doesn't offer an invitation. There's just a response.
They
Because
interrupt him. Yeah.
yeah, they cut him. They're like, "Hey, listen, we've heard enough. We're cut to the heart. What do we need to do? Because, man, we've messed up." And so he obviously tells them, repent, be baptized. you receive the forgiveness of sins and the gift of the Holy Spirit. And then after this, 3,000 people are baptized, and the church is now localized in Jerusalem. And in some cases, I heard someone say, in some cases, this isn't super practical because you would have had a lot of people traveling, and so they would have relied on that community and in Jerusalem at that time during Pentecost to support each other because they were all traveling, and many of them were probably from other places. I don't know that you can say this is not practical because of that. I would almost say maybe that's why God did it when he did it, was so that we could have this picture of what an ideal setting looks like for a church. And it's a deep-rooted, unified community who love Jesus. And so Acts 2:42, it says that they, talking about these Christians who had just been baptized, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. And awe came upon every soul. Many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. All who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking the bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved. I mean, there's so many important little pieces here. First of all, I'm using the parallel with a week of church camp. What are they devoted to? What are you at church camp for? Well, I mean, you're at church camp to devote yourself to teaching, to fellowship, breaking of bread, depending on what kind it is in that specific spot, whether it's eating a meal together or sharing in communion. I mean, I think both of those are evident at a week of church camp. And prayers. I mean, that's what you do at church camp, okay? Yep. Verse 44, all who believed were together and had all things in common. Tell me how many people stood out at a hot, sweaty week of church camp in Texas. You know what I'm saying? Or Oklahoma, where I grew up. Dude, you can't really stand out. There's no hope. You're fighting against the heat and the sweat. Yeah.
Everybody is in common. Yeah, everybody is going through the pain together.
We're all living it. And we're living in the same places. No one has luxury bed except for the directors. I don't know. Maybe it was unbiblical, but listen, we're sharing our meals together.
I've been in the director's cabin before when I went back as a worker, just one of the college guys that refilled the waters everywhere. I got to stay in the director's cabin, and those beds are the same. There's nothing special at camp. Everything is everybody's got the same uncomfortable bed. Everybody's dealing with the same weather. Everybody's eating the same mediocre food, which some people like the food better than others, but everybody's eating the same mediocre food. And it literally is, everybody has all things in common.
All things in common, man,
nobody's better than one another, and especially the sports. Oh my goodness, how humbling can the sports be? When especially me, I get out there and I'm like, oh, I'm going to be one of the best athletes, and then all of a sudden, there's somebody that's better than me at everything. And then if you're better at basketball, you're going to be worse at kickball. If you're better at softball, you're going to be worse at nine square or whatever you play. It quite literally is, everybody is being humbled, and everybody is unified and the same.
Yeah, and it doesn't happen by accident either. I think that's really important. How many adults do you have out there that know what the mission is? And if somebody starts, I remember when I took the sports too seriously when I was early high school, and I played basketball, and so we got out there and it was basketball time, and I was going to win, and I was going to take every shot, and I was going to. I remember yelling, "He can't shoot!" And then I think it was Brett McKnight turned. He goes, "Come on, you're getting to the point where you're old enough that that's not what this is about, Yeah. And it was just a check. Hey, I wasn't trying to be malicious, but I was getting competitive, and
it's a tough lesson every high school guy has to learn. Yeah,
we all have to go through it. And then you got your team, and you got people on your team that you're like, oh, that's okay. So sports aren't your thing, or your thing, or maybe this is all about me. Oh man, maybe that's not the point. Yeah, everyone has to. You got to go through that at different times. The funny thing is when you get a counselor out there who's never done camp sports, and they have to learn it in front of everybody too. That's always a blast. But I mean, this environment is cultivated where we're all in this together. We're all doing this together. If somebody starts getting out of line or trying to raise themselves, or I mean, I watched camp counselors go over to groups that were starting to become cliques, and not in a mean or malicious way, but just step in and say, "Hey, you guys have only spent time with you guys. Let's go do this together, and we'll bring some other people in." And like, it's a very intentional thing to have this kind of community. And I think as humans, we don't tend to just naturally have it happen. It usually requires some effort. But so they had all things in common. They were selling their possessions and giving to everyone who had need. I mean, anyone who had a need, like, that was taken care of, which is, again, very camp-like, especially when you think about the way that the counselors were involved. And then this is the part that always gets me. And day by day, or every day, or day after day, they were attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, and they received their food with glad and generous hearts. Like, they didn't see each other once a week, you know? They didn't see each other once a month. They were seeing and involved in each other's life on a regular basis. Yeah. Paralleling it to camp, I mean, we're living together for a week, which is significant. But you think about other times in your life or other great relationships you have. Your best relationships are the ones that you devote time to and that you're able to be around those people regularly. And even if you have a really close friend that you move away from, it's not like you guys are any less close, but there is something different about that relationship than when you were in proximity to one another, you know, and that every day or that regular spending time with each other, that is what community does. Community doesn't see each other every now and then. They know each other. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have taught this in a Bible class with the sense of we need to be involved in each other's lives on a more regular basis, even if it's not the entirety of the church. Every member here at Wiley, we have we average about 3:30 on a Sunday morning. And I'm not saying that Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you know, the days that we don't have regularly scheduled work services, that we have all 300. No, it's a matter of, you know, this Friday night, I'm going to have a couple of families over to my house because I'm going to be with the church family. On Saturday, I'm going to be spending time with the church family. On Monday and Tuesday and Thursday, I'm going to be spending time with the church family. And obviously, I know we have schedules, we have lives, but if you're actively choosing to put the church family on the back burner, but also actively choosing to participate in whatever other life activity you have, you're making a choice of priority, and that's what the community is. Yeah, absolutely. And I was as I've taught this before, people have said, well, it's just not realistic because they live so close together. They all were able to spend time together daily like that. But honestly, it's just a choice. It's just what do you choose to participate in? How are you choosing to spend your time?
Yeah, and I think the other part of that too is, like, you're telling me you've never experienced community with anybody, you know? Like, you the general person, has had this experience for the most part. You've had this experience somewhere. You've committed that kind of time to something. For a lot of people, it's a little less common nowadays, but, you know, 10, 15 years ago, it was, you know, a job. Like, you're at the office Monday through Friday for 8.5, 9 hours a day, and you know those people, and you develop a sense of community. I mean, there's a whole TV show built on it, you know, where the people hate each other at the beginning, and by the end, you're weeping that they all have to leave. You know, like this is a thing that people do. We know that community requires proximity and time. It's just like you said about priorities. Like, are you going to choose to make that community these people with these values for these reasons, or are you going to allow that community to be somewhere else that maybe you find more enjoyable initially, you know? And I mean, that, like you said, it just boils down to making a choice about what is valuable to you.
And here's the crazy thing is the church, the Lord's church, is going to be effective whether or not you're a part of it or not. You know, I think we can sometimes have an arrogant attitude that says, like, oh, okay, you know, once I choose to be involved in and join in this community, then we're really going to do the Lord's church. And the reality is no. Like like God's
Yeah.
will does not depend on you. He's offered you the opportunity to participate
Yeah.
in his
Yeah.
will. And we are incredibly blessed when we have more and more people choosing to participate in the work of the Lord's church. But it's not dependent on any individual.
Yeah.
It's going to continue on whether or not you as an individual are a part of it. But here's the other awesome thing about it is when you do choose to be part of it, then you're choosing to let go of something else. In verse 45 there, and they were
Yeah.
selling their possessions and belongings and
Yeah.
distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. They were
Yep.
choosing to take care of one another over taking care of their own needs. They were choosing
Yeah.
to be focused on spiritual things rather than being focused on their own physical possessions. When you are choosing to participate in the community, the church, the family, then you're also choosing to leave something behind. And
Yeah.
honestly, if there's not a better analogy of deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me than that, I don't know what it is. It's literally denying yourself of something else so you can be fully jumping in with both feet, doing a cannonball into the church to be involved and to be
Mhm.
surrounded with this community. And then that's where you're going to find the energy that goes along with being in the church. And
Yeah.
it's very easy to just dip a toe in and say, I'm here, but I don't see church energy. I don't see the excitement that comes along with this. It's just a
Yeah.
bunch of nonsense. Well, that's because you're just dipping a toe in. If you really jumped in and joined in this, then you would see the community and you would see the energy. And I love that you've used church camp as an example for this because you talk about that summer high where we're like, wow, this is
Yeah.
awesome, this is great, and then you go home and you're like, where is it? Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
all of the factors that contribute to being part of that community while you're at camp are not restrictive to camp. Now, it's an easier environment to get
Mhm.
those factors running, but they're not restrictive to camp. You can
Yeah.
still spend day by day with the brethren. You can still be involved in one another's lives, and you can
Yeah.
still be an active participant of the team. If we're going to go back to sports analogies,
Yeah.
it's not things that it ends at camp. It doesn't end after whatever brotherhood event that you're choosing to participate in. But it does end if you
Aren't
choose
doing
not
those
to.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. The things you do at camp that make it so special are not exclusive to camp. It's just a matter of like we just don't do those things when we're not there, you know.
Mhm.
And so if you did all those things, you'd probably have a very similar experience. But we don't have that, and I think it's a maybe a litmus test. Like, what do people think about the church when they show up? Because when there is a tight knit, close, like dependable, unified community, like you feel that. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
I remember somebody came to. I'm not trying to brag on Flower Mound, although there are a lot of really really beautiful people at Flower Mound. But someone came recently, a visitor for the first time, and they said, "This is like home. Like this isn't how I've done church in the past.
Mhm.
It's special. It's like they couldn't even quite put their tongue. Like it was a community. It's a unified
Yep.
community of believers who, and I keep coming back to this because it's important, want to be around each other. There is nothing
Yep.
more obvious than when people don't want to be around each other, you know?
Yeah.
And so the fact that, what does someone say when they come to, your congregation? Do they show up and go, man, I can see it. I can feel there's something here. These people, they clearly love God. They clearly love each other. This is a community of people that want to be together. Or
Yeah.
is it that feeling we've had at the end of camp where you come back and you're like, you guys did not live what I just lived last week, and this is not it. What is
Yeah.
this? You know? And so I
Man,
think it could
as you're
be, yeah.
talking, it's making
No,
me
go ahead.
just excited to see my church family. Today's a
Yeah.
Wednesday as we're recording. This will be posted on a
Yeah.
Friday. But tonight, the church family is going to be gathering together on a Wednesday night, and I'm excited to see my church family. Like just as you're describing it, that's making me excited. It's making me longing for the church, and that's a good thing. That's
Yeah.
that's
It
what we
is.
need to be seeking out. That's what we need to be looking for.
Yeah. I think, sometimes when you talk about feelings, I always want to make sure we like pay some respect and let the other side of the coin be seen too. Like, I don't always want to go to church. As the minister, you have me on record. Maybe you can't post this anymore. But like, I don't always want to go. Like, I have a family of 5. I have life that happens. I have days that are way worse than other days. And sometimes I'm at the end of the day and my kid didn't nap and I've been having to wrestle with the laundry that's overwhelmed me for the last 3 days. And because of our house's state, my wife and I have been at each other's throats because like this is a human experience. And so it's not that you always have a yearning and a burning for church, but when there is that foundation of community, you're always glad you went, you know?
Yeah.
You come away feeling better than you might have if you hadn't gone.
If that's not the truest statement, where sometimes you don't have the desire to go, you don't have the desire to be around Christians, but then when you leave, you're like, I am glad that I went.
I'm just glad I was there. Yep.
I didn't know I needed it, and I'm thankful that God reminded me. But yeah, dude, that is so true. Well, thank you so much for joining this discussion today. This has been fantastic. I know it's been a blessing to me. I hope it's been a blessing to you, and I'm confident it's been a blessing to everybody that has listened to this. If you are listening to this on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you can be notified every time a new episode is posted. If you're listening to this on Spotify, hit the follow button. Make sure you can be notified anytime a new episode drops on Spotify. If you have not yet subscribed to Church Energy Daily and Monthly, the daily Bible verses that are sent out via text with some thoughts to meditate on and further your study, and the monthly articles that encourage you in your walk with Christ, encourage you to take the pride in being a Christian. We don't have pride in anything else in this life, but one thing I do, that I belong to Christ and Christ and Him crucified, that He died for me. I am proud of that I belong to Christ. And there's articles talking about the good parts about being a Christian. So if you have not yet done that, send a quick text. You just have to type out energy to 817-646-9953. You'll see the number on the screen, and join in Church Energy Daily. This is Church Energy Weekly and also Church Energy Monthly. So Joseph, do you have any other comments before we close out?
Yeah. Hey, if you are not subscribed, like, always go check, because you might think you are and you're not, and that's helpful. And the second thing is, there's a podcast I listen to, it's a college football podcast, and he encourages his listeners to steal their relatives' phones and also subscribe. So do that if you have the chance.
Awesome. Yeah. I love that idea. Yeah.
I appreciate you having me, man. It was a blessing to be able to have this talk with you, and man, I'm excited about tonight, and I'm excited about what you're doing with this Church Energy thing. Be praying about it, and that God will use it and make an impact, man.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.